Greetings, my friends. You are interested in schlock, for that is why you are here. You are interested in the terrible, the grindhouse, the exploitation. And that is why, for the first time, anywhere, we can bring you the full and complete story of Ed Wood. Let's roll the trailer.
Tim Burton, director of Batman, Beetlejuice, and Edward Scissorhands, now takes you to a completely different world. The true story of a Hollywood legend, Ed Wood.
And action!
He made movies like no one else.
You want to keep moving. You've got to get through that door. Ah, that was perfect.
Perfect. Do you know anything about film production?
Well, I like to think so.
He had an eye for talent.
I met Bela Lugosi.
Well, I thought he was dead.
This is the most uncomfortable coffin I've ever been in. No, he's very much alive.
You flying saucer?
He had a passion for storytelling.
Get me transvestites. I need transvestites.
You're flashy. They want that. Okay. But they want professionalism. So nix on the Nelly without losing naivete.
What kind of a movie is this?
It's science fiction. A heartbreaking romance. Brave robbers from outer space.
Brave robbers from what?
And he had a secret he couldn't hide.
I like to dress in women's clothing. Panties, sweaters, pumps. It's just something I do.
You don't like sex with girls?
No, I love sex with girls. Wearing their clothes makes me feel closer to them.
How can you act so casual when you're dressed like that?
All right, everybody, let's finish this picture.
Touchstone Pictures presents Johnny Depp, Martin Landau, Sarah Jessica Parker, Patricia Arquette, and Bill Murray in the true story
Give him a hand. Keep rolling.
of an unforgettable filmmaker.
We're making another movie. I got the Church of Beverly Hills to put up the cash.
How do you get all your friends to get baptized just so you can make a monster movie?
And his legacy that will live forever.
How do you turn this on?
Shake his legs around. Looks like he's killing him. This is the one.
I command you!
This is the one I'll be remembered for.
Ed Wood, a Tim Burton film.
Really? Worst film you ever saw? Well, my next one will be better. Hello?
Alrighty, welcome back from the trailer to Ed Wood. Now, the reason that I put Ed Wood into Thesis Month, there's a couple of reasons here. One is that, well, obviously, Edward D. Wood Jr. is the fucking patron saint of Video Ferox and the Video Nasties. So that is, I mean, just a given that we'll get to his work someday. The other reason is that this movie is essentially, at its core, a love letter to low-budget filmmaking, to your Roger Cormans, your Andy Milligans, your Herschel Gordon Lewises of the world. People who have this absolute drive to make a goddamn movie regardless of what is being thrown in their path. So that's why it's in Thesis Month. Also, the third reason is because I fucking love the movie. But then I've just tipped my hand that, in fact, I fucking love this movie. So, Brad.
I think this is a great movie, and you're absolutely right in that it captures the essence of low-budget filmmaking. And one of the wonderful things about this movie is it feels like an Ed Wood movie. I mean, Burton did an amazing job of doing all of that. I mean, it was totally filmed in black and white. It was filmed on crappy film stock deliberately so that, you know, you can see little skips and bumps in the movie while it's going on.
Howard Shore and his music is dead on.
Oh, definitely. The music in this movie is great, particularly in the opening. And it also, you can see Ed struggling to make something of himself in this business, and he's doing all sorts of things. He's directing, he's writing the screenplays.
He's hustling.
He's hustling, he's acting, he's doing effects, he's doing everything that is possible. And the hustling part is horribly entertaining because sometimes it doesn't work very well and he falls flat on his face. But it's
Ed Wood not good at something? Oh, I'm shocked.
yeah, but it's great, and there's other wonderful moments in this. The friendship between Ed and Bella, that's good. I mean,
The casting all around is great.
oh, the casting is excellent. Best moment in the movie for me is a bit where Ed Wood is in a diner and he sees Orson Welles sitting at a table, and it's like a beam of light coming down from heaven illuminating Welles, and he's like, ah, and he goes over and talks to him, and they talk shop, and it's one of the greatest things ever because you've got Orson Welles, one of the greatest movie directors in all of history, and also a phenomenal actor and writer, and then you've got Ed Wood, and it's just a great scene.
All right, so yes, we fucking love this movie. It's the only Tim Burton movie I really, really like. You're a little more forgiving for Tim, but I mean, we both enthusiastically give this thing a thumbs up all around. All right, let's move on to the spoiler section. We're full on spoilers now, baby.
Silent Green is people!
Okay, before we get into the discussion of the actual movie, I want to address a couple of key points here. One, Ed Wood is allegedly the worst director of all time. This is a bunch of bullshit.
I will admit it is a dubious honor, but it is still, in a strange way, an honor.
Well, we'll put it this way. If, in fact, Ed Wood is the worst director of all time, then how come we're still talking about his goddamn movies 70 years on since he made Plan 9? So, obviously, there's some sort of staying power.
One of the things that's funny about this movie is we see why. He never retook scenes. He'd only shoot them once. And he believed, in his own particular brand of crazy, that it was perfect. And you see that. You see that in his films.
So the movie, it opens with this big, spooky, haunted house, and it's obviously a miniature because Ed Wood, in fact, would have had a model on a table somewhere that had a little smoke in front of it. Opens with Jeffrey Jones as a note-perfect Criswell. Criswell being the guy, can your heart stand the incredible palpitations when you see Plan 9 from outer space? It's that dude that opens Plan 9.
One thing that's funny about this movie is I actually remember Criswell being on The Tonight Show. He was a regular guest, and back in the dark ages of The Tonight Show goodness, hosted by the brilliant Johnny Carson, Criswell showed up occasionally, and I'm just barely old enough to remember that.
I predicted in 1976, people will no longer be buried due to a shortage of land. In fact, there will practically be no more land left anywhere. And I predict that these people will be cremated and placed compressed in tiny cubes about the size of dice.
That's really crapping out, isn't it?
We get into the opening credits, and this is kind of flying through this model of, and being that this is a Tim Burton movie, it's obviously stylized and very surreal and but still inherently Ed Wood. And so you see, stock footage of an octopus because, Bride of the Monster. And, then it ends up flying over Hollywood, which is clearly a model, but it's kind of evocative of, the whole tone of the movie.
It really is an excellent opening, and you're right about it being a Tim Burton opening. We've seen that before. It's kind of a lot like the opening to Beetlejuice.
Tim Burton is not my favorite director. I really don't like Batman. His later stuff, his more modern stuff, is really just Tim Burton smelling his own farts. So. I'm not a fan of his work. I liked Beetlejuice, I liked Pee-wee's Big Adventure, and I fucking love Ed Wood. So I'm kind of coming at it with a little more of a jaundiced eye, but I will admit that he really nailed the look of an Ed Wood flick.
Then everything else that they do in it, it's It's like if Ed Wood did a biography pick.
Oh, this movie is totally 100%. If Ed Wood would do a movie about himself, this is totally the movie that he would have done about himself.
Johnny Depp is a spot on perfect Ed Wood. He looks like him, he acts like him, he's got the body language.
Now, to be perfectly clear, the movie isn't 100% factual. There's a lot of liberties taken with the movie. It's very fanciful. It's very much a fairy tale told from Tim Burton. So you get bits like the movie ends before Ed Wood, his career kind of after he did Plan 9 and his stuff started winding down, he wound up doing pornography, he died penniless, and he was an alcoholic. The movie kind of brushes up against that when they do the where are they now bit at the end, but mostly it's they kind of skip that part. Or the scene where Lugosi is getting autograph from one of Ed's crew, and he's like, "Oh, you were great in that movie with Karloff," and Lugosi's like,
Karloff does not deserve to smell my shit. That limey cocksucker can rot in hell for all I care.
Karloff and Lugosi, they had a friendly rivalry, sure, but they were still very much, hey, very cool with each other. Or bits like where Tor Johnson wasn't quite the monosyllabic Neanderthal that he's portrayed here.
I'm a movie director.
Goofies, like the Mickey Mouse?
Sure.
So there's a lot of, it's in the surface of the story, just kind of roll with it.
Bella had a career that went south after a while. He got into heroin and messed himself up, and for a good long period of time, you hardly heard anything from him because he was doing drugs and living off of his earnings.
And that's the parallel between Ed and Bella, and I've suddenly forgotten Tim Burton. That's his name. And the parallel between Tim Burton and his relationship with Vincent Price. So it's kind of an autobiographical that way, too.
I remember when this movie came out having a few discussions with other people that liked movies, and they were basically bad-mouthing Ed Wood for being such a technically poor director. And
which, I mean, if we're being fair, is not an inaccurate assessment of his talent.
No, you're right about that. But it's beside the point. I still like Ed's movies, and a lot of other people do.
Well, it gets back to the thing that I have been saying for the entire Video Nasties, where there is no such thing as a bad movie, there's only a boring movie. Now, Ed's movies definitely are bad, but they are entertaining as hell. I enjoy them, and they have a charm about them.
Yeah, and sometimes it's fun just to watch them, just to find all the technical errors that he made, because I mean, some of them are really obvious and bad, like the infamous gravestone falling over. That alone has its own charm and its own joy of life, the French joie de vivre, which is, Ed enjoyed doing this, and everybody who got involved with him enjoyed working with him, and they enjoyed making these productions.
And the joy of that is permeating this entire movie is why I love the ending of this thing so much. So this movie is essentially following, not quite making Plan 9 from Outer Space, but is definitely the fulcrum that everything pivots around towards the end. And so Ed is like beset by like the Baptists who want to change the Plan 9 from name from Plan 9, no, Grave Robbers from Outer Space to Plan 9. And he's like beset by money problems, and Vampira doesn't want to say any words, and Bella's now dead, and all he has is Tor Johnson, who's incomprehensible. And so all this stuff comes crashing down on him, and he says, fine, fuck it, I can't do this anymore. Leaves, and then we have the scene with Orson Welles. And after that point, the movie kind of turns into very fantasy, because they have that heart-to-heart, and putting aside the whole best filmmaker ever and worst filmmaker ever, it's just two guys talking about their love for film and how bad the system sucks. And what could be construed as just a pep talk trope is more just these two guys who could be legitimate friends having a heart-to-heart. And then the movie takes off and then does its kind of fanciful ending. And it has Ed and the premiere of Plan 9. And this is in no way factual. You know, there's this big theater. The theater is packed. They're all nicely dressed. And Ed comes down and the music swells. And he's living this moment of, I have made it. This is what it is to be a big film director. And then they premiere the movie and everybody loves it and they're fucking into it. And he goes and him and his girlfriend Dolores, they leave and they like, let's get married, let's go. And the optimism, it's raining, we can't do this, the top's not going to work on the car. And he's like, no, it'll probably stop raining by the time we get around the corner. So the optimism that infects the movie is so just, yes, I love the ending.
And the one line that Ed does while watching Plan 9 from outer space is just perfect. He says, this is it. This is what I'm going to be remembered for. And you're just like, wow, he's so right.
And somewhere, the monkey paw's finger curls.
But on the other hand, he had moments where he was like, this is the life. I've made it. I'm a big man now.
All right, so we brushed up briefly about the acting in this movie, which is on every level pretty phenomenal. So Johnny Depp, put aside what his career eventually turns into, where it's a pasty outsider with a weird hat and a strange accent. Put that aside. Although actually, suppose thinking about it, technically, he is still playing a weird, pasty outsider who doesn't fit in. Okay, so ignore that part. But then, we mentioned Martin Landau, who's fucking brilliant. I mean, he got an Oscar nominated or won, I don't remember which. But, I mean, Oscar and Ed Wood in the same sentence doesn't belong. But I mean, even folks like the sleazy film producer who hires him for Glenn or Glenda is absolutely perfect. Bill Murray is note perfect.
Oh, I loved Bill Murray's performance in this. I mean, he was great as a transsexual who wanted to do the transition but never got around to doing it. And he's always in men's clothing, but there's a certain effeminate aspect to his clothing. And the way he talks and his body language, it's like, I mean, he has Bunny, that's the character's name, he has Bunny down really well. And I actually did a little bit of research and found out that there was a guy by that name that was part of Ed Wood's circle.
Actually, that's something that the movie doesn't dunk on Ed for. Now, okay, being that this was, I think it was came out in 92, something like that, so early 90s. So dunking on the gays for being weird and kind of using them as a point of mockery is still pretty prevalent from the 80s. The movie doesn't do any of that. It is actually pretty respectful of Ed and his lifestyle choices.
There definitely is some elements of comedy in Ed's cross-dressing.
But not at the expense of Ed himself.
Exactly. And I distinctly remember hearing something from his widow when this movie came out, and she said she loved it, and when she saw Johnny Depp dressed up in the pink Argyle sweater, she's
Angora,
the pink Angora sweater, she was like, oh, that's my little Eddie. That alone is, if you've managed to capture that from somebody who knew Ed personally really well, is just like, wow, that's really nice.
One example of how well constructed this movie is, there's this one scene where they're just getting Glenn or Glenda off the ground. And Ed has called Bella and said, hey, we've got a part for you. Come on by and I'll show you the script. Bella shows up, and Ed's on the phone talking to Bunny, and it's like, and he motions in, and he sit down, I'll be in just a second. And it's like, I need transvestites, get me lots of transvestites. And the way the shot is staged, you see Bella in the background with this very bemused, what the fuck did I just get myself into look on his face. Just little moments like that throughout this whole thing is just why this movie is so fucking awesome.
The bit where Ed is trying to sell himself to the producer who did Glenn or Glenda is just great. He's saying, why he's the perfect director for it. And he goes on to say, I wear women's underwear. And, you know...
Are you a fruit? No, I like women.
Yeah, and I mean, it's just a great scene in that, you know, there's nothing wrong in what Ed's doing in his own mind. And in fact, truth be told, I don't think there's anything wrong with being a transvestite at all. It's just what some people do. And this makes it a normal thing for an odd man.
And there's legitimate moments of like pathos and drama in here, like the scene where Bella is crashing from being high on smack, and him just lying there. It's like, you know, Eddie, I'm broke, I'm dying. Nobody in Hollywood wants me. I'm high on smack. I don't know what to do. And Martin Landau just lying there, basically crying, is so heart-wrenching. It's like not expected in a, what is up to this point, a reasonably funny and lighthearted movie.
Oh, and then there's the bit where Ed checks Bella in for rehab, and the doctor is talking to him, and he's like, he doesn't have insurance. He's got no money. We're gonna have to. We can't continue treatment for him, and Ed's like totally crestfallen, and so he basically goes over to Bella and straight up lies to him, but he does so in a manner that's nice.
It maintains the illusion that Ed has assembled in his head.
Yeah, and he's like, Bella, guess what? You're cured. You can go home now.
You're being discharged. You're fine.
And Bella's lying there on the bed going, I don't feel so good, Eddie. And Ed's like, come on, let's go home. You can rest at home. You're fine. You know, and the fact that he's putting on a cheery face for Bella's sake, and at the same time, you're also wondering, is this in Ed's head? Is this just Ed's optimism popping up, or is it Ed deliberately trying to cheer up Bella? I mean, that's a mystery aspect to it, and I like that. I like that scene a lot, and the fact that Ed is trying his best to put on a good face for Bella, and I mean, it's really touching. The friendship between the two men is really, it's the thing that sells the movie for me in the strongest point.
It's the emotional core of the movie, for sure.
One of the things about Bella and his life is he was one of the greats. He had been a star, he had been a phenomenal actor, and he helped define a genre. Not just play a major role in it, but he shaped it and sculpted it. And this was a really critical role in horror for him to do, because horror, when he was doing it, horror was just starting out, and it was wild and chaotic and unformed. And Bella helped define it and make it great. And he needed Ed. He needed Ed for the closure that his life had, because, you know, otherwise he would have died miserably, you know, addicted, broke, and friendless. And he had somebody that helped lifted him up. And most of Bella's final roles are Ed Wood productions. And admittedly, he did a few other things, but that was because of the friendship that Ed had for him, and the fact that Ed was doing things like being a friend to him, getting him into rehab, giving him money, and making sure he was, you know, awake and healthy and relatively vibrant at the twilight of his years.
I want to call an audible here. Bela Lugosi wasn't quite completely friendless and forgotten at the end there. His funeral was, in the movie, it was portrayed as, the only people who showed up to Bela's funeral were the Ed Wood crew. And that's another artifact of the movie being fanciful. In reality, Sinatra paid for the funeral because Bela was broke. But folks like Vincent Price and Peter Lorre had shown up, and they were famous for having an alleged line saying, they had an exchange saying, should we put a stake in him? That sort of thing. And they had like Forrest J. Ackerman at his funeral. They had a bunch of people who went and paid their final respects to him. So it's not 100% that he was friendless, but he was definitely on the outs at the end of his life.
Now, admittedly, in the earlier part of the relationship, Ed was exploiting Bela. He was using his name recognition. But it grew and it became a genuine friendship. And, I like that.
Again, back to the fairy tale feel of the movie where Ed is so optimistic about everything, even when the world is against him.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we can go on about this goddamn movie forever because I fucking love it. So I'm just going to throw it to you for a final thought or two. What do you got for me, Brad?
The best way to sum it up is, that's a wrap.
Sure. All right. That sounds good. All right. We'll catch you all next week.
Visit our concession and see for yourself the delicious treats, drinks, and snacks awaiting you. If you are thirsty, try ice-cold soft drinks or a cup of hot, flavorful coffee. Get something to go with it, like a sizzling and satisfying hot dog or a tasty, tender sandwich. Try one of these delicious treats, and you'll be back at the concession for more before the show is over. The service at our concession is friendly and efficient.
So I guarantee you this will probably be the last time that you will ever see Johnny Depp and Tim Burton on this show, ever. Next month, it's going to be an experiment. We put my thesis month on the shelf, and now we're going to let the idiots drive the boat, where I'm going to let the crew pick a movie a week, and let's see what they come up with. So, will it be interesting? I have no idea what the hell we're going to watch next month. So, while we wait for that disaster to unfold, please drop us an email, thevideonastyproject@gmail.com, and until then, stay evil.
Now, what is the one thing, if you put it in a movie, it'll be successful?
Tits.